Okay, we're here again in the ski shop. Today, this video is going to be about deburring and re-waxing the ski. So, this ski has had the unfortunate circumstance of running up at Mount Bachelor this season with a low snowpack. We are a volcanic mountain and there are many rocks if we don't have a lot of snow. So this ski is pretty burred up, not only on the edges, but is also burred where it's had some pretty severe gouges in the base. You may not be able to see that again in this video, but there's a lot of ways I guess you can handle this, but the way that I like to handle it is the main thing is to go ahead and remove the high spots. This requires an extremely light touch with an extremely sharp chisel. And it takes some practice, so you might want to use an old messed up ski before you create a big gouge in your ski. What I'm concerned about here, and I got some pretty serious gouges here, I don't want to base repair them. They're not deep enough to affect the performance of the ski. We do have one here next to the edge that's pretty decent down in here. As far as, but you know, again, if we do any base repair on there, we're not going to absorb wax in the beast right there again. So anyway, deburring is not just the edges, but it's also the base when we have problems. So again, I'm not concerned about the gouges or the low spots, but I want to remove the high spots, because when the ski gets scratched, it creates a high spot right there. Now that high spot, I want to take that off because that's going to create drag. Again, this is an extremely light touch and this takes practice. Now as I do this, it's going to pull just, and you don't rush on this, and you use very minimal pressure with a very sharp scraper. Okay, I cannot express to you enough that this is done with a very, very light pressure. And what I'm doing is I'm cutting the high spots off the top of that. Very, very carefully. Now as I do this, here I'll bring this chisel up and show you. Okay. Well, let's see here if we can get some focus. You see the stuff there? There's stuff there now, see? That's coming off, okay? And those are the high spots. As long as we remove those high spots, that'll help the ski drag less. Those high spots, and you know, hey, we're not talking World Cup here, but we got some pretty good high spots. And if we remove the high spots, the gouges will not slow the ski down that much. And initially, yeah, they'll be full of wax, but the wax will wear out of them. It won't stay in those grooves, depending on how often you re-wax. And so anyway, blah, blah, blah. We've got some nice, long, thin scratches on this ski. And you just barely touch. Barely. This, again, this takes practice. And remove that and follow the gouge with your chisel. Carefully, though, generally in the direction of travel of the ski. As you see, I'm going this way and I'm not going sideways, even though I've got a gouge that's somewhat sideways here. If I do go this way on that gouge, I'm just barely going to touch, okay? That's all we're trying to do is just... And the other thing that helps to remove these high spots is your fiber pad. And again, here, look, see, there's a nice amount of debris there that just came off that one. So anyway, your fiber padding, and you're going to see me do a little bit of that later, that helps to remove these high spots too, okay? So we just want to... We're going over the ski base, the P-Tex base. We're looking where it's been hit hard. We're removing the high spots. This is a telly board. This is used by a mono skier who, this is his sole ski under. If you guys don't know what a mono skier is anyway, that's a guy who's can't use his legs anymore, and he sits in a bucket and watch the X Games for the mono skiers. Anyway, this telly board is super big, super fat. So I thought it would be a good one to show the re-waxing, because it's going to be a long video, folks, okay? So prepare yourself. If you want to know how I do it, how I believe is best to do it, that doesn't mean it's the only way. You're going to have to watch the whole video. If you haven't noticed before or watched some of my prior videos, you notice some of what you see me doing is going to be real boring. But the attention is in the details in the conversation. And that's where if you don't watch the whole video, you're not going to get what you're looking for as far as the knowledge or whatever, you know. And again, I'm not saying that my way of doing everything is the best way in the world to do these things, etc. But I'm doing this a while and I'm pretty confident in what I'm doing. And you see me, I'm working these larger gouges that you probably can't see in the camera. All I got's that little screen to look at, like I always tell you, so I don't know how this is going to show on the cam, and I don't have someone here to come and operate it and, and focus right over what I'm doing. But these are some larger gouges, and like I told you, this is a very, very light touch and a very, very sharp chisel. And you just keep working that, the really big root gouges. Again, very little pressure, and you're going to practice on tilting this chisel and keeping one hand underneath it, and that's kind of like your guide. Okay, so depending on how low you lay it or how high you bring it, the higher you bring it, the higher the risk of gouging your base, but yet the more you'll cut. So there's a happy medium as you're going over a gouge to remove the high area around it, without without digging in. And a real light push, my hand is barely behind it. It's almost done more like this. You're not even putting your hand behind this thing and pushing on it, okay? You're just resting it in your hands and letting it do the work. That way, when you hit the high spot, it'll tell you, and it'll stop in your hands, and you're not grasping too tight, So anyway, like I say, this takes some practice. Real light touch. Now right there, I was going over that groove, and I could see that, if your chisel is not perfectly square, and the other thing is the base of the ski is not always going to be perfectly square. So you may find your chisel digging in to the right or the left of the groove that you're working on. So use a different portion of the chisel, maybe, again, with a really light touch, okay? We're not talking World Cup here, so we're not going to get really excited about this. But, okay, but now I think we're looking pretty good with the chisel. I've removed all the high spots. The rest will come. Actually, this could probably use a little sandpaper. It's pretty bad here, but this is going to be okay. A little sandpaper here of the proper type. Silicon carbide, I believe, is what we're generally talking about. So anyway, the fiber pads again will help break this down as well. Okay, so that does it for the deburring there. It's another big giant tool. You won't see too many of these. This tool is probably about 100, well, maybe it's not 100 years old. But seriously, this came from my grandfather who died many, many years ago. It's always been well cared for and well kept. This is a big plane. And you can literally take one of these if you want. You got to know what you're doing just to check a ski. This is really good for checking a ski for flat. But you can come down. Oops, got my fluid here. Anyway, you can do this on a ski, and on a snowboard, this is pretty cool if you got some big ones. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. Same sort of tools that some people might use in woodworking. Okay, so now we're going to start deburring the edges of the ski. Now this ski was tuned really well earlier this season. I personally set and polished the edges, and the edges have a nice polish. Now, I don't want to refile the ski. Some people say, oh, refile that ski all the time. I just want to deburr it. The edges are already really pretty good. So I'll take a diamond stone that's been really worn. This one was given to me. It's really thrashed. You can use any type of diamond stone to deburr, whether you want to use a 1500 grit or, you know, an old worn out 220 grit like this one, okay? So this is a 220 grit diamond stone. It's really worn out and beat. So this is the time you can deburr these edges. You can put your tools, your tools on there if you want. It's 1 degree base bevel. I could go ahead and run it like this to deburr the base edges, and then I could put my tool in for the side edges, which side of the beast, and I could put this in here and you know, and work that, but and that's fine. But for a simple deburring, if you're confident the ski's already tuned well, and you know you can do this by hand. So this is how we're going to do it. We're going to use just a little bit of fluid, and we're going to run down the edge of the ski. We're going to listen. Now the edge of the ski's got a 2 degree angle this way. Okay, the burrs are mostly going to be at the top of that edge. So initially I'm going to focus my angle more straight up and down, just to touch the tip of the edge, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to feel and listen. Where you feel those little rough spots, they talk to you. Oh yeah, hear that? Now see, a deburring on a really well polished edge won't take you long. And we may not get that completely perfect. I mean, this ski's been rocked pretty good, but this is what we're going to... Ooh, listen to that smooth out now, see? See, we're just taking off those little bits of debris, little metal hairs and fingers that occur when the ski edges hit a rock. There's always a deep spot that's created by the scratch that the rock hits, and there's also a high spot or a lip or a hair, and those are what we're concerned about right now. That's all we're going to take off. Okay, so now listen to this edge. This is done not with a lot of pressure, but you do have to hit enough pressure when you find the burrs to remove them. Don't be afraid. Now this edge has already been tuned. It's got the correct angle. The amount of rubbing of the diamond stone right now, I'm not super concerned. We're not going to dull the ski out or ruin it. Okay, so now I did the side edge. That's deburred pretty good. Now we're going to do the base edge. Now the base edge has a 1 degree bevel that goes in this angle. Okay, so again, most of the burrs are going to be hanging off the side, but I've already pulled those off this way. So anyway, this entire base edge can be gouged by the rocks. So I kind of want to just find a flat angle and go ahead and run down it where it's going to be rubbing the P-Tex. It's really, I want a smooth interface between the P-Tex and the edge. Okay, that sounded real smooth. That's fine. Okay, so now that I've done that on more of a flat angle, okay, a flat angle, now I'm going to tilt that baby and pretend like I'm just trying to create with my fingers more of a 1 degree, you know, an angle this way. Okay, so now we're going to concentrate and run this down to where it's touching just the edge a little bit more. And there's different ways you can do that, but I hold my fingers just to give that stone an angle. And you listen. Don't press too hard initially. You're listening for where is it the worst spot and where is it not so bad. Now I noticed underfoot where we had the extreme raspy sounds as we went down this edge. Well, we've got the same thing here because that's where all that was created. So we're just going to work that a little bit more. Not excessive with the pressure. You can hear it. It'll smooth up a little bit. It may not become perfect. It's smoothing up now. It's sounding much better. As you work this a little bit, same thing when you're tuning. Initially, you just scratch it and barely touch it and listen to where you need to work a little more and where you don't need to work a little more. And then you press a little harder, okay? You don't want to go overboard here. We're just deburring. We're not trying to retune. Now I'm just going to run back down this side edge again to take off the little burrs that I created when I did the deburring on the base edge. It's like sharpening a knife, you know, you're coming back and forth and you're just taking off those little burrs. Okay? Very low pressure, not much. I'm still getting quite a bit of roughness in through here, so give it a little more pressure on a couple strokes. Not too much. Okay. Feeling pretty good about that. Feels good. Notice I'm not even wearing gloves. I can run my finger down this edge like this. Am I cutting my finger? God, no. But is that edge sharp? Yeah. And, you know, if you take your fingernail and you go like that and it cuts into your fingernail, that's good. You know, it doesn't mean it's going to perfectly slice your fingernail off in every little spot, you know, if there's a little bad spot in it. But overall, the entire edge of the ski is in nice shape now. Okay, the other side, I wouldn't even do that with my fingers right now because I'd probably cut myself. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the same thing on this side of the ski. Go down this way. We're going to go down this way. You saw how I did on that. So we'll break right now on the deburring. Okay, so we deburred the base of the ski with some chisels. We deburred edges. I'm going to finish deburring this edge and then we're going to continue.